Hey everyone, Sly47 here. We are finally at this full review of all the Tier 10 cruisers in World of Warships Blitz. This has been a freaking journey, and there's been new ones brought out that I don't have yet that I'm working on, but we'll get there. We'll get there. So first things first, this is going to be a video. Don't worry about watching. There's no gameplay in the background. This is just me talking and ranking ships. If you want to create your own, I will have the link down below. Let me know how you would rank the Tier 10 cruisers, and let's kind of discuss. Let's see, maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong. It's all opinion at this point, and there's only a few that I think are pretty much arguably, they will never move to anyone because of how powerful they are, or how weak they are, and that's it. So, okay, how this video is going to work is I'm going to go over the explanations of everything, of how the tier maker works, each tier itself, and then I'm going to get into the ships. There are going to be some built-in reviews, so there's going to be some larger sections and smaller sections. Hopefully we can have some fun and learn some stuff, especially with the two new ships that just came out, the Pietro and the Alexander Nevsky. So probably going to do slight reviews on those when I get to them, but let's get to the explanation of ranks. So we have 5 tiers in this list. We have meta, solid, niche, playable, and needs love. To kind of go through it, they aren't exactly in an order, especially with niche kind of in the middle, but we'll get to each one. Let me explain. So meta, these are top meta ships. They're the best of the best. They are in an amazing place. They have very little issues wrong with them. They are usable in so many different team comps and different solutions for everything in a game. They can be played solo, with teams, any which way you want. Highly suggest ships in this area. Now, in the overall idea, I would much rather have these ships be in the solid area. Okay, meta kind of gets in that borderline OP area, or overpowered. Not exactly a great place for a ship, but there's a few ships that I think that they serve this meta well, and they live in that meta section, but they don't just shove ships out of the area like a few other ones. So we'll get into that as we keep on going through this. Solid ships. These are ships in really good positions right now. This is where you want your ship to land if you really like one. They are really good in almost all team comps. They do well in randoms. They've got certain areas where they perform better than even potentially meta ships, but not as well in the overall arc of everything. They really are in a good shape. Maybe a few buffs here and there might help them, small, minor ones, but other than that, they don't need to be touched, and other ships need to be touched before them. Niche. So these are ships that typically play the gambit of the field. Certain games, they're going to be needs love. They're not a good situation for them. But then other times, they're going to switch up to meta. Then we even have a few ships on this thing that legitimately, depending on where they're at in the game, they can go from playable to meta or playable to solid. They have their place in their niche, and that's a really good place too. I would not consider necessarily niche ships less than solid ships. I would just say that you need to understand on those niche ships that sometimes you're just going to get shut down. You are. It's just the nature of it. But then other times you're going to do the shutting down, and it's going to be like they never had a chance. So it's a great position to be. Understand that. Let's move on. Playable. It's kind of understandable at this point. Like it's just a ship that is, it's good. It's okay. Like, it does its job. It can have moments that are really good for it, but it's not going to be something that's going to be carrying all the time. It's not going to be something that does well all the time. It has its issues. It needs some love, but it's not as bad as the needs love ship. So at least it's playable. And most ships are basically playable and above. There's only 2 ships that are lower than this, and in the needs love category, which of course that category, these ships have no, like they have strengths that people, wargaming's like, oh yeah, this is this strong. But the problem is there are ships that are higher up in this list that do everything that their strengths do and better. They do not have anything. So as much as this need love, I'd also just kind of name it as the identity crisis. These ships have nothing to do in the current meta that brings benefit to your team. And that is really bad position to be in, and I really hope that Wargaming can buff these and get them out of there. So, with those explanations, let's get into the reviews. All right, our first ship up, we're just going to go in alpha order as how it's presented on Tiermaker and such. The Alexander Nevsky. Where are we going to put this? It's brand new. It's basically a Super Donskoy. It's got laser guns for accurate with a quick fire rate. That's actually really solid. It's a great range player. I definitely struggles at closer ranges due to its maneuverability issues, and there is a current bug on it. But I believe that if we ignore the bug and we just go with that, so we know it's a Super Donskoy, faster fire rate, one less gun per turret, and such. And it does have it has a 2-2 layout, which isn't exactly the best setup at tier 10 when there's a lot of other ships that can bow tank with over 50% of their firepower up front, so they're not losing literally half their fire rate. In my opinion, after the bug, it's gonna land solid. It is. It's still a Donskoy. We just saw this with the Talon come in, and we have obviously the tier 9 Donskoy. It's a super solid ship. It has radar, it has precise aim, it has AA. Its AA is pretty decent. Nevsky is that all-rounder ship that it kind of can handle just about everything. It's not going to be the best at everything, but in my opinion, it just does what it does well enough to not be a master of none situation. I think with a few more buffs, it could really land solid. I was kind of thinking playable for a little bit with the bug and everything like that. But as I watched a few more videos, I really do believe they're going to fix that bug, and they're probably going to bump it just a little bit in a few changes to really nail it into a solid position. So this is a great addition. A Donskoy ship is not exactly bad, but you do need to play them at range. You do need to play against DDs and against light cruisers. This is great for ripping through them and killing with those 180s. So solid ship. I would highly suggest it, especially just for the Donskoy alone. And the Chappie and those lines, if you do like fire starters, they're really fun ships to do. So really, Alexander Nevsky, in my opinion, once fixed, it will be a solid ship. Nothing really against it. It's pretty much all rounder, especially with that one radar. It holds its own against just about everything in this game. On to the Buffalo. So, Buffalo, in my opinion, I've played this a good bit. I'm going to probably piss off some people, but to me, it runs the niche and playable line. I'm going to line towards niche on this, and let me explain. In my opinion, a Buffalo is best in a team. It absolutely kind of goes unnoticed in the battlefield. It has no armor, so everyone kind of thinks, oh, it's just an easy kill, I can get rid of it at any time, so they don't focus it. So when you can pair this up with a good battleship and get close enough with people, have the battleship take damage, and then have the Buffalo help out dishing damage, it's a very, very good ship. But alone, the Buffalo really goes into playable. It's just too easy to kill, and it has no skills to be able to defend against smoke or anything like that when it is trying to take down DDs. It's a better force multiplier, and it kind of keeps that average damage up. The recent buffs kind of definitely pulled it out of playable to me. It's definitely more niche, in my opinion, in that sense. It does have the 50-50 turret layout, but I still think it definitely holds its own. And I think even on the video on my review of it, a lot of people did agree that like one sonar would make it absolutely solid. It would be very good in that position, so it could defend itself just a little bit better against DDs, where right now it's definitely more of a just additive damage to the battleships and cruisers that are in the fight right now, but unfortunately it still just gets shut down too often. So it's still a solid ship, especially since it is in the shipyard right now. If you like cruisers, it's a good pick, but you have to realize that sometimes it's best played in teams. All right, so Colbert, on to our first needs love ship. Even after the recent buffs of getting sonar, it's still not good. It still doesn't. The problem is it's an attempt at, in my opinion, at least an attempt at a tier 10 Atlanta. It has small guns, bunch of them, and such. It's relatively short and such. It's basically tried to be a massive AA platform, but it doesn't compete with other really good AA platforms of the same tier, even with its AA boost. It does well. Like, it'll definitely knock down fighter squadrons, but it just won't do it great. But its main thing is its speed. And when you're the size of a barn, which I understand it's probably a little bit bigger than a barn in real life, but you get the gist. It's so easy to kill. Its speed can't save it, especially when we have the likes of certain cruisers in this review and or Vermont's, Montana's. This thing gets annihilated by it because it just catches shells. It's such a huge ship. And I'm like, hey, okay. I think that their attempt at this was, let's make a Smolensk with a lot more guns on it, so it's not the trolley quad turrets and like that. Let's make it better at A, and let's make it more about moving, because the Smolensk is more about positioning. So let's kind of do this counter. Okay, one's about mobility, one's about just holding out. So Colbert, in my opinion, drop the AA skill. Keep the sonar, keep the speed, keep that idea. Throw a few fuel smokes on it. I know some people will be like, hey, that's really annoying. You're just making another Smolensk. The problem is this thing is still so big. You can hit it in the fuel smoke because it's not a problem. So you could do that, or lower its water line. Get or bring its water line up to it. Make it a little bit harder to hit to make its speed a little more applicable. Because of right now, if you look at it in game, you're like, how can I not hit this thing with all of my rounds at max range with ships that aren't even good at doing that? I really want the Colbert to be good because it really should be. It should be kind of that unique, okay, I'm going to pepper you with 1,000 rounds, but it doesn't have the staying power like the Hargumo, like the Atlanta, like the other ships that have that niche. So it really fits and needs love, and I hope they fix it. I really hope they do. Next up on the block, Des Moines of the Des Moines. This was a hard ship for me to place. And I was going to initially do solid. I really was. The problem is this has a few enemy team comps that push it into playable. So I'm going to shove this right into niche, borderline solid. It really does have everything to be in solid. But let's kind of go through this first. So it's great at taking caps. If you are within its area, this is a problem. You need to take out a Des Moines. It can bow tank, or it can get that third gun on and really start ripping damage out of its 203s. It's fast firing even without its rapid reload that it has. Its AP or HE doesn't matter. It still hurts. Its utility mixed with firepower. It's a great all-rounder. In my opinion, that lack of range just prevents it from being in the solid. And then on top of it, it doesn't have that staying power. I really hope sometimes I would say up its armor, but in my opinion, almost just up its health. Give it a few thousand more health just to give it that little bit of staying power, because it is really a brawling cruiser when it comes down to it, the range that it's at. It has its capabilities. I would suggest putting Kincaid on this because the Worcester doesn't need a third radar. Okay, let's just all agree on that. It doesn't. So you can bump the Des Moines to be a really strong ship with Kincaid in certain situations, but if there's a lot of battleships on the enemy team, it can really struggle to put out that damage and stay there long enough to put out that damage, or in general, just not be able to do the damage because everything's shooting it from further away than what it is. So it's a hard ship to place for me, but I really think niche fits it well. It does need some buffs to put it into solid. But in my opinion, if you like these type of ships, it's a really good ship line. You won't be mad at it. Just understand there sometimes you're going to get shut down. It just is what it is. All right, on to the Goliath. So this is the second needs love ship. This is an identity crisis ship. Everything it does, there is another ship that does it better and then some. Even in the playable category, there is something that does it better. This ship fundamentally is broke. And something I actually learned from playing the Yoshino, which was kind of funny, is that because of the fire chance, you actually should swap shells every salvo to make sure you have the highest fire chance potential, because when you fire your first set, the reload on the Goliath is almost as long as a Stalingrad, and it doesn't even have remotely the amount of firepower the Stalingrad has. But by the time that you get the second salvo on target and that person's healed, that second salvo does not have a chance of igniting a fire. So you literally have to wait for every third salvo, if you don't get a fire or if they heal, to have a potential of another fire. So, in my opinion, the Goliath just has, like, it's got a reload problem. Its armor catches shells like nothing else. It's got way too much armor, in my opinion, for a heavy cruiser. It needs to be, actually, the funnier thing is, it literally needs its armor nerfed to be better. And the long reload is there for no reason. Like, why is that way? It's too big to hide. Like, kind of like the Duke of York. Everyone kind of saw that one coming the moment it was like, oh, it's a tier 7 battleship with smoke. It's like, the thing's a massive thing. Like, you can't not hit it in smoke. Everything about this ship just screams problems. And it then, in practice, absolutely screams even more problems. So, in my opinion, this is a ship, do not touch this line. It's just not worth it. Even grinding the line, I think like the tier 7 might be kind of half decent, but once again, it's all of them just don't do anything well. And there are other ships that do it better that can now beat them out. Like, it's not even funny. So hopefully the Goliath will get a buff. I really hope so. I hope they don't nerf it like the Russian battleships, even though I have a feeling that's what's going to happen. So, but yeah, the Goliath needs love. It really needs it. All right, next up, my favorite ship, basically, my near to dear. It's such an amazing ship. If it was me, and I only was going off of just my pure opinion, Henry IV would be the first meta ship, but I know in most hands, it's not that. It's not that. It's niche. It is a run and gunning ship. It is an absolute burst machine with no armor and no AA, pretty much, depending on your playstyle. And this is the one ship that I kind of mentioned earlier, where it was like sometimes in the game, it goes from playable to meta. Like it plays the gambit and such. And, you know, you might go, hey, well, Colbert was fast, but Henry's fast too. Like, how are they different? It's because the Henry has 240s instead of little pew-pew guns. It has the burst damage to absolutely annihilate even battleships. Battleships should be scared of this thing when it has its rapid reload on. It's a freaking monster. Do not let a Henry live long in your game, as much as I would love for most people to be idiots on how to handle a Henry. But no, Henry is a ship that the longer it stays in game and the more skills it has, the higher it gets. This is a ship you want to play a little slow. You want your team to wear people down. You want to get that. And then later on, you're just going to sneak in and start capitalizing on using your skills properly and absolutely annihilating your enemies. That's what the Henry is, and I think it fits perfectly in the meta. They have been buffing it recently. It's because I think a lot of people are just playing it as just a regular standard cruiser. Its AP and HE are both good, but I'd say prefer stick on AP on stuff. But once again, it is a ship that really lends itself to a situation within a game, not just the situation of the team comps or anything like that. So as much as I'd love to put the Henry higher, I think it definitely is a niche ship in most hands. All right, so we got our first playable ship, the Hindenburg. Now, from my review, many of y'all would have said, needs love. Absolutely goes right into that. And I blame the USN crew for trying actually teaching me how to play her. I blame them. So I actually can make her playable. You know, she's good. She does well in a few situations, but those situations are kind of few and far between. She is very good at nuking DDs at range because of how accurate her guns are, and the AP absolutely destroys that. But like, there's another ship on this list that absolutely dominates that overall, and it kind of beats that into a pulp. So Hindenburg, it's really needs some buffs, and I don't think I know anyone who would actually disagree with me on that. It really is a ship that it does need some love, but it is still playable in the current meta in some way. It's a master of none situation, so there are certain times where it's just enough to kind of get past the finish line. So I know there's some people that would probably say it's more solid, and I would love it to be more near the solid pick because I really think it should be. It just right now kind of sits a playable. And now, the one and the only, really, we have to have our first meta ship. We have not had a single meta ship out of this, and we're almost halfway through. We gotta bring it up. The Minotaur. It's meta. It's the ultimate toolbox. The guns, the torps, the AA, the mobility, its skills. The armor is low, but its concealment prevents that problem. And on top of it, the smoke prevents that problem. It's a high skill ceiling ship, though. This is a ship only for those who are prepped and ready to handle an only AP cruiser. And understand that difference. They have to understand the shot pattern of the Minotaur. They have to understand when to smoke, when not to smoke, and which they should be learning generally up in that grind. That grind is really good for teaching you how to play it. If you are enjoying it if you're enjoying the tier 6, just know it keeps getting better and better and better. The entire line, in my opinion, is damn near solid or meta, tier for tier. Do not be persuaded not to go up this line when you are a cruiser player and you understand how to play only AP ships in some way, or only, maybe there's, you play the Italian cruisers and you really don't care about the HE. This is another ship line to go up of. It's really good. And I would say, though, without David Beatty, it's riding that line down into solid. But with Beatty, it's meta. So if you happen to have that captain, Dave Beatty puts it right up to meta, and it makes an unstoppable force. It has all the tools to handle everything in-game, pretty much. Even with the amount of radar cruisers that we have in this game, or sonar cruisers in certain ways, it still outperforms them in certain ways, and you can absolutely shut people down. It is still, once again, a high ceiling cruiser. Take it out and have fun, but make sure you've got your game face on to really make it just go insane. Alright. For meta, especially, just got nerfed. Where does the Moskva land? This is going to be probably the one that runs the gambit on everyone's tier maker list. I know it is, but in my opinion, they just merely knocked the king. It's meta. The Moskva is still in a good place. I don't care. Okay, yeah, they slowed down the shells by 300 milliseconds or something like that. They increased its penetration on both HE and AP. Realistically, if you want a ship, if you're like, hey, the Nevsky just doesn't hit hard enough, and the Pietro, we'll get to the Pietro actually, the Moskva is an amazing in-between ship that literally has everything to handle every team composition of the enemy team, every way you want to play. It has decent AA, good secondaries, great guns. They're still pretty good lasers. They hit hard. They can start fires. It has radar. It has precise aim for really now kind of a reason. Like previously, the precise aim I never used it, never needed it, even at max range. Now it kind of does. I can kind of see why you'd want to use it more often. It's got the AA buff. It really is a perfect all-rounder ship. They did knock it a little bit, but in my opinion, if you are still learning tier 10 cruisers and really having a tough time, the Moskva has a low skill ceiling. And my previous review, basically just its laser guns aren't quite there. The Pietro now has them, but the Moskva has something that the Pietro doesn't, and that's the radar, and that is a great deterrent against anyone deciding to try to rush you as a DD in smoke. You can shut them down. Moskva is still solid, still meta, still an amazing pick. If you can pick it up anymore, I don't know, but for people who own it, still enjoy it. Don't believe the haters. It's a great ship. All right, let's do this. I'll piss some people off. Oh, Pietro just came out. It's a Stalingrad with smaller guns, rapid reload, precise aim, AA, long range sniper. Got the laser accurate guns like the Moskva used to have. It's barely playable. It's gonna rustle some jimmies. All right, here's the problem. Stalingrad has its own problems. Basically, the Pietro just made them worse. The thing is, it doesn't need rapid reload. It needs a skill to defend itself. The Pietro is a Moskva pre-radar, and a lot of people do not realize how giving it that one radar absolutely took the Moskva even from playable to kind of solid to meta. It has no way to defend itself up close. It is a long-range sniper, and that's it. And from my review of the Stalingrad, you'll know, if you want to up your average damage, yeah, go for it. Those ships will up your average damage, but they will drop your win rate like a brick without a team. Without someone backing you up with skills that can defend you against DDs getting close, defend you against carriers that, by the way, your ship is huge. They literally can't miss. The ship has fundamental problems wrong with it because it doesn't have the right skill setup. I don't know who thought this was a good idea. Now, of course, it's going to be a great damage dealer. Once again, I can't knock that. And in damage-wise, it's solid. But there's another ship in this entire meta that just shoves it right out of it, and it's based off of it. This is not in a good place. It needs a buff. It needs more of a niche other than, oh yeah, I can do a ton of damage. There's plenty of other ships on this line that can do a ton of damage. It's just not good. The Pietro has its problems. Maybe I'd get the Talon because that is a tier 8 Donskoy. You can't knock that setup. But I wouldn't push on it hard to get to the tier 10. It's gonna hit Citadels, it's gonna hit hard, but you're gonna get hit hard back, and you're massive, and you're gonna get taken down by DDs if you have a Moskva at that same time, you're going to be just wanting a Moskva. Because that one radar just is capable of keeping A, DDs away, or B, DDs dead in front of you. So, Pietro, it needs buffs, and I really hope they buff it because it really should be really good. I think the 360-degree turrets would be actually really good for it because it might give it a way to run away a little bit from DDs and not have all of its firepower basically having to switch over to one side and everything. That could be its way of defending itself against close range attacks, but right now it needs buffs badly. And as we keep on going on through this long line, we're just over halfway. So, Puerto Rico, where do we put it? It's an Alaska class with another turret. It's playable. That's not, I know I didn't do a review on it, and this is kind of a ship I don't really feel I need to do a review on. It's good. It can do its thing. It does have radar. It does have some slick skills, but in my opinion, it's just too big. It's a shotgun with its shells. It absolutely can't hit crap and such. Some people can make it work, but in my opinion, it's okay. That's all I can say. That's why I didn't really do a review for it and such. I've talked to so many people with one, and they pretty much say the same thing. It's okay. It's not special. Doesn't do anything great. It is another radar cruiser which can shut down certain things, but its accuracy really hurts it. Its size hurts it. Yeah, it's problematic, but at the same time, you could still make it work. It still is 12 guns. I think 305s. They still do a lot of damage. It's just, and it does have the skills to defend itself with the Pietro the Pietro does, but it just doesn't have the accuracy. It doesn't have the danger to it. So, yeah, that's where the Puerto Rico set's just playable. It's kind of meh. Okay, let me level with you. We all know where this is going. Almost every single tier maker of this is going to put this exactly in the same position. It's the Smolensk. The Smolensk is going meta. We all know it. It's such a low skill ceiling ship. You put it in a captain that doesn't know jack crap, it's solid. You put it in the hands of a capable person, it goes well past it. I thought about making it its own tier, its own area, the Smolensk tier, because it is that powerful that when it's in the right hands, it's disgusting. It is. There are multiple people I've posted up on Reddit and multiple people I know that absolutely like they feel dirty after playing it. It's just that insanely powerful. It needs no review. That's why I didn't do a review for it. It has a 4x4 setup on guns. It is incredibly powerful. It averages 10 fires a game. It's disgustingly powerful. Its torpedoes are good. Its smoke is good. It's just the full package for that situation. Now, in my opinion, with a coming ship that will be talked about, it could be brought down to solid just via the community having enough capability to shut it down. And when it doesn't have smoke, that is something that it can get countered hard. It takes a lot of damage and gives a lot of Citadel crises. So, in my opinion, while the Smolensk is meta, I think we need to bring up the Hindenburg. I think we need to bring up even the Puerto Rico. We need to buff these ships to kind of push it up so we can push the Smolensk down out of its high position in meta where it borderlines overpowered with certain people playing it. So, heck, I would even love the Colbert to be the counter of it or something like that. Bring up these ships to counter it and bring it back down with another ship we're talking about. So, yeah, the Smolensk is meta. It's pure and utter meta. All right, now talking about that ship that absolutely gets shut down by its community, that gets pushed back from just the community knowing about it, is the King, the Stalingrad. It's solid. Its guns are just so much better than the Pietros. It absolutely wrecks stuff. It is the king of average damage. It wallops battleships, cruisers, even DDs at times. Its secondary batteries absolutely destroy. The problem is that DDs just rush it. It has nothing to defend itself against you. Absolutely nothing. Besides you, Holland. Don't go near it. Don't go near it. But everybody else, Shimas, everything, Stalingrads, you just rush them. They have no defense against you. Smoke up, launch torps, pop a few fires, run away. They're done. They can't do anything. That's really a problem. I thought about putting the Stalingrad in niche, but in my opinion, it really sits in solid because of just how powerful its main niche is, which is it's just so powerful. This will up your average damage, but this ship also has one of my lowest win rates. That's why I said the Pietro was just a worse Stalingrad. And yeah, the Stalingrad really is in a great position. I think I would not want to give it any buffs right now, because it would reach the level of the Smolensk if it got any buffs. So once again, I think other ships need to be brought up to kind of counter it, or the Pietro needs to be brought up in ways that kind of make it unique to bring it solid, not in this situation where the Stalingrad's just straight up better, which right now it just straight up is. And both of them get countered hard by DDs, but I'd rather take a ship with 3 E05s than 2 20s that fire at the exact same rate. So, my opinion, Stalingrad, it's a solid ship if you can pick it up. May luck be ever in your favor. So, all right, on the last 4, we're getting there. This is taking a long time, but we got a really good one right here. Venezia. It goes right in the niche. I don't think anyone, I think it definitely sits well in solid too. But in my opinion, niche fits it well because if you don't have a lot of DDs on your team, it kind of goes to playable. But if you have a crap ton of DDs on your enemy team, it goes straight up meta. This ship shows off when, this ship, if you hate DDs, that was my whole review. You hate DDs, get the Venezia. Go for that, and then let alone now with the Black Amalfi and the thing, you can get a little bit of a taste of how powerful it is. Add 2 more turrets onto it. Watch as DDs vaporize in front of you. It's funny. It is great. The only problem is it doesn't have a way to detect DDs. So that's why I kind of call it niche, is that if there's a lot of smoke-heavy DDs in your game, it's just not as strong. But if you have a lot more ships that aren't focused on staying in smoke, or you happen to have allies that use their skills correctly, the Venezia can shut them down. You go straight meta whenever you have more than 3 or 4 DDs on the enemy team. And the enemy team, also, if you see a Venezia and you're in that situation, shut them down. They will be the one that wins the game for the enemy team. It's not anyone else. Straight up insane. It really isn't a good state right now. I would say that I think they need to buff the Brindisi and the Amalfi, like the base versions, a little bit. I think they nerfed the Venezia from its previous state, which was a long time ago now, into a really good middle of the road. It's good and such. Now, one thing though, shoot AP at battleships and heavy cruisers. Don't follow anyone saying you need to shoot SAP all the time. Please just switch your ammo types. I know it's not hard, but that will increase your Venezia potential within the entire game. Use Venezia well, treat her well, she'll treat you well back. So, great ship in the niche category. Okay, final 3, and we got our last meta ship, Worcester. Going straight meta. It's not for me. I did recently finally break 100,000 in it. That was actually one of my first games that I ever broke a big caliber in it. It's just not for me, but in my opinion, even if I was like, okay, tier 10, we've got a challenge, we got a team comp we got to do, and we need somebody with AA, good firepower, and great skills to shut down their DDs, Worcester is perfect. It is. It has great firepower, great fire starting chances, the skills, the armor, AA is absolutely insane. It is a full package ship. Hate carriers get this ship and outrate it with full AA. It's hilarious. I think it's like 9,600 on the rating. It burns down entire squadrons of midway fighters and midway bombers before they even land on you. That's how damn good it is. You literally have to have a very good carrier to shut you down in a Worcester, and that's something really nice. So the Worcester, it's just a great all-around ship. It plays to its strengths, and it plays in almost any team comp. You can't argue with it. It's an incredibly solid ship, and I would suggest to anyone who can handle those suborbital arcs. That's really my biggest problem with it, is I like more laser guns. But at the same time, I can still see that it is one of the kings in the meta. Alright. Yoshino. That review was kind of funny to hear in the comments on half people being like, was that really a review? Or what? So, Yoshino, where does it land? There's a lot of people would say needs love, and as much as I'd love to put it in the niche category, really? I'm going to put it in playable. In my opinion, it is more capable of being played than the last ship on this list in more team comps. It does have its things it can do, and it can dish out a lot of damage, but that's with certain circumstances needing to be met. It's nowhere near an identity crisis because its guns are good, its torps are good, its skills are good. It's just the armor doesn't sit well, especially when you like with the other battlecruisers. You have a Stalingrad up there, you have the Moskva. It doesn't have the same problem as the Pietro. The Pietro just needs the buffs to get up to solid, but the Yoshino, in my opinion, sits well at playable. It does need some buffs. I'd probably just say it needs a buff in health. It needs a buff kind of just sustain power because the armor just soaks up so much. So it barely survives the need love category. I know in the eyes of the community, in me it's better, but of course I understand. I look at the community and I see what happens, and I do enjoy getting Citadel Crises from Yoshino's. They just give them to it. So as much as I love it, I have to understand it is just in that state, and I wish it was better because it really does have some unique set of skills, power sets, and torpedoes and guns. It really could be really good with the right buff. And finally, we are at one of my favorite tier 10s, but also one of the most devices. I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of your tier makers on this, everyone, because I really would like to see where you put the Zhao, really. That, Pietro, and a few other ones, they're going to be interesting where you put them. But the Zhao is niche. I want to say it's solid, but this is the one ship that runs the gambit of the entire thing, depending on the team comp. If you have a carrier on the enemy team, a competent carrier, it's in needs love. It is. You get shut down so hard. I think there's a few games up of the stream that absolutely I get shut down in the Zhao. There is nothing I can do in it. And there's other games where it's just playable. It's okay. It does its job. And then there's other games without carriers with only a few DDs that it goes straight up meta. The amount of damage this ship can push out, and that's kind of the problem, is that like it's fire starting torpedoes, everything that it has, it really can mess the entire team up. You want to kill DDs, it can do it with its guns. You want to kill battleships, it has all the concealment, all the torpedo power to annihilate it along with fire breathing once they heal up after flooding. You have all the capabilities. It has almost zero armor. But man, like the team comp itself decides your game. And that's a rough thing to be in, and I don't know how I'd want to fix it. Maybe I was thinking maybe one fuel smoke just to kind of give it a little bit more staying power to kind of get out of a situation. But that could be used to do an absolute run on a battleship and absolutely mess it up. And it could be that one thing that finally really tips it off to being solid to meta. But the problem is the moment you move it out of niche and you buff it just a little bit, in my opinion, it goes right to meta. Because it just has that capability of just doing that. Yeah, it's a hard ship to balance. I kind of understand why they rarely touch it. They did kind of give it a concealment boost a while back, but oh man, it is definitely a ship that I love it, but there are some games I just have to chalk up to matchmaker killed me. That's all I can say. There's nothing I can do against certain carrier players. There's nothing I can do against certain DD players, but when I get that one game, it's worth it. It's fun. If anything, I'd have to say that it at tier 8, I would just stop if before there's any buffs. If you're like, hey, I don't want to be team compliant, the Takao is a great pick just to stop at and call it good. And especially with how bad the Ibuki is. So, but in my opinion, I do like the Zhao. I think it goes really well in that niche category because it runs the full gambit. And actually, this was the one ship that was one of the first few ships that I actually was like, I need a niche category. I really need a niche category, so I added that. So that's what the Zhao sits, and that's it. That's all of them, unless they add more. But I don't think we're having any more anytime soon because we've got other stuff coming up in the pipeline. But yeah, oh, I hope y'all love this video. Please post your tier maker lists down below in the comments. Like and subscribe for more content like this. I really did enjoy doing this entire series. I probably will just start picking random ships from now on how to, what reviews I want to do on. If you want a particular review of a ship that I already own, let me know. Else I'm just going to kind of be doing a grab bag here and there. See y'all in the high seas. Peace.